Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to work on hip mobility, incorporating the foam rollers. I got a couple foam rollers in the corner. We're going to go through a series of hip mobility focused movements. Then as a general assessment to begin with, then we're going to bring out the foam rollers and we're going to work through a few different spots in the hips to see if those movements improve. I also have somebody in the class who this morning woke up with some ball of the foot pain, big toe pain on the right foot, along with knee pain. So anytime ball of the big toe is tight, restricted, it generally will cause pain on the inside of the knee. So we're going to work a little bit into that pattern as well. Hopefully the combination of working on the feet, working on the hips will get some relief into the knee. May also be good for low back issues as well. So let's get started. So we're going to start on the floor on quadruped, hands and knees, spreading fingers nice and wide, grounding palms and extending the elbows fully. I want to go ahead and get into a little bit of light wrist mobility. Then we're going to get into some foot mobility before we bring out the lacrosse ball. So getting some nice deep breaths, full inhale in through the nose, exhale out through the mouth. And as you exhale, feel your navel draw in and up through your spine. As you inhale, I want to get into that crocodile or balloon breath. We try to feel that expansion of the abdominal wall. Feel the belly move down to the floor, but also feel the low back expand as well as out through the side body. I want to imagine that the abdominal walls are a balloon. And as we inhale, I want that balloon to inflate in 360 degrees, all directions. And then as we exhale, full exhale as you feel that navel draw into spine. And with each breath, see if you can get a little bit more expansion of your balloon. As you start to feel that breath sink in, on the next inhale, let your hips rock back towards your heels. And on the exhale, we're going to rock forward and load into our wrists, noticing the difference of the right wrist compared to the left wrist. Inhale, rocks backwards. Exhale, light rock forward. I want to make sure that we are not moving into pain or discomfort. Just getting a nice, gentle assessment for how does the right wrist feel compared to the left wrist. After 5 breaths, we're going to turn fingers out to the side, and we're going to start working our side-to-side glide. Nice exhale as we shift our shoulders over one wrist. Inhale back to center. Exhale to the other side. See how much can you move your shoulder over your palm, loading into that wrist, making sure that we're not going into pain. But I do want to compare still. How does the left side feel in relationship to the right side? Is one side stiffer, achier, more restricted? Making sure again that we are not moving into pain. And we're going to turn fingers all the way back towards the knees. Closer the hands are, the less intense this is. The further out, the more intense. And I do not want this to be intense. Inhale now, we're going to let our weight go forward. Exhale, feel the weight of your hips sink back to heels while keeping the palms grounded and loaded. Feeling that load into the forearm space. With each inhale, continuing to expand the abdominal wall. And with each exhale, feel that navel draw into spine. Next, we're going to flip the palms upside down to the back side. This position can be uncomfortable if it's new. We're going to let the elbows bend to start with. And I want to focus on that elbow space. Lightly pressing back of the palms into the floor to extend the elbows, and then allow the elbows to bend. And I want to play with this elbow extension. How much can you work to straighten those elbows, lightly loading and pushing into the back of the wrist, into the floor, and can you feel some stretch? If you feel a stretch, then that is exactly what we want to look for, and I want to play in that juicy nature of that stretch. Moving into it, seeing if you can get a little bit more extension without forcing it and without pain, and then allowing it to soften. Exhale as we extend, inhale as we soften. If you are able to extend the elbows fully without any stretch at all in the elbows, then we can do a little bit of rocking back hips to heels. Again, inhale as we come forward, exhale as we let our weight shift back to the heels. Then we're going to come off our wrists, roll them out a little bit, get them a little bit of rest and flow. Then we're going to come back to our quadruped, spread hands. And now we're going to get into our feet. And since we're working specifically with that big toe today and some big toe discomfort, I want to go light and easy. I don't want to force this. Let your knees splay out a little bit wider than hips. Tuck the big toe and turn the heels in. See if you can touch your heels together. If they don't touch, it's not a big deal. But I want them turned in so that we can get loaded on that big toe by itself as much as possible. From here, we're inhaling as our weight is forward. We're going to exhale as we allow our hips to sink back to our heels, loading into that big toe space. I want to see how much extension can we get from in our big toe as we sink our hips back. Inhale, coming back up and forward. Exhale, feel the weight of your hips sink into that big toe space. I want to make sure that we are not going into pain. Light discomfort at the most. On a scale of 0 to 10, I don't want this to get above a level 2. I want to stay in that really soft, comfortable space with this movement. And notice the difference of the right big toe compared to the left big toe. Since the big toe was a little bit angry this morning, we're going to go up to 10 slow reps, making sure we're not forcing it. Nice inhale forward, exhale as we sink back. Once we get up to 10, we're going to bring our knees in closer together and turn the heels out wide. Now I want to see if we can get tucked underneath all the way out to the pinky toe. Big toe does not have to be tucked underneath quite as much. I want all the other 4 toes tucked underneath. Everything else is going to be the same. Inhale as we go forward. Exhale, drawing navel into spine as we feel the weight of our hips sink to our heels, and we're seeing how much extension can we get in the rest of those toes. Inhale as we come forward. Exhale as we sink back to heels. You can also notice, how does this feel in the arches of the feet, especially the lateral arch? Is it different on the right foot compared to the left foot? Is one side tighter, more restricted, a little bit less, maybe it's more uncomfortable? Again, we'll do a good 10 breaths on this. And after 10, we're going to come up, we're going to stand all the way up, and we're going to grab our lacrosse ball. And I'm going to suggest going ahead and grabbing a staff or a dowel rod or something for just simply to have for a little bit of balance work to hold our body stable. And we're going to do some foot mobility or slight massage on the bottom of the foot, and then we're going to come back to our foot mobility to see if we get some improvement in that big toe. So with the ball, I want to place the ball of the big toe on top of the lacrosse ball. And I'm just setting it on here very lightly to start with. And we're going to just slightly shift the foot forward so that that ball moves just to the base of the big toe into that nice meaty muscle right at the base of the big toe. From there, we can allow a little bit of weight to drop through that foot. I'm not pushing into the floor, but I'm kind of leaning into my dowel rod and allowing gravity to just load weight onto the lacrosse ball. I don't want this to be painful, so I want to follow the pain scale with any kind of massage work that we do. So I don't want this to be above a level 3 on a scale of 0 to 10. Again, in that nice slight discomfort area. And we're only going to keep the ball on any spot for about 60 to 90 seconds. So, which I'm already kind of at this point. So I want to get into a nice deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and we can slowly move along from the base of the big toe and follow that toe line all the way down to the heel and kind of feel for what I would call the spot. Where is it most sensitive? Where does it speak to you where it says, I want some massage pressure here? When you find that spot, you're going to stop on it, allow the weight of gravity to just drop through the foot. And I want to imagine that that spot is melting butter and the ball itself is a hot knife. And you're just going to breathe and allow that butter to melt. And hopefully within about 30 to 60 seconds, you're going to feel that spot start to reduce in its significance and how much you feel it. I don't want 100% reduction in that spot. I don't want it to go away completely. I only want about 30 to 40%, which I am already feeling. So once you get 30 to 40%, we can move either up the big toe line or down the big toe line towards the heel and see if there's another significant spot. And if you find that spot, we're going to spend another 30 to 60 seconds on it. Again, nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And feel that melting butter effect. What I want to avoid when using a foam roller or a lacrosse ball is I don't want to jostle my foot back and forth a whole lot. I don't want to stimulate or strum with the massage tool too much. I want to find the spot and then allow it to melt. Now, as this spot starts to reduce in significance, we're going to go ahead and switch to the other foot, and we're going to do the exact same thing. So placing the ball of the big toe, I want the bony part of the ball of the big toe on the ball to start with. And then we're going to move that ball just a little bit south of the joint so that it's in that nice meaty space. And then we're going to allow a little bit of weight and a little bit of pressure in order to just get that first initial melt. Taking some nice deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. As you feel that melting, then we can start to follow along that line, just simply exploring for where is the spot. Once you find a spot, again, it's just an area. The spot is an area that kind of speaks to you a little bit more loudly. Maybe it's more sensitive. Again, I don't want it to be a level 3 or above on the pain scale. So adjust how much weight and how much load you're putting into it to keep that pain below a level 3. The reason I want it below a level 3 is because if it's a 3 or above, your body is going to start naturally tensing up, which is kind of the opposite response that we want from a massage. So I want to keep that pain level low so that we get more of the therapeutic benefit of what we're doing here. Again, 30 to 40% reduction in discomfort from that spot. And then we can go find one more spot. Again, either moving more towards the heel or more back up to the ball of the big toe. Once you find it, the spot is melting butter. The ball is a hot knife. Nice deep breaths in, and on your exhale, just feel that butter melt. And something to kind of notice is, like, is the left foot more or less sensitive than the right foot? I'm going to assume for the client that is in class that the right foot, since it was the right big toe that was more painful this morning, that the right foot was probably more sensitive on the ball. However, that is not always the case. So I do want to kind of pay attention to that. If it's the left foot, then that would be something worth talking about. Now, as that spot reduces to 30 to 40%, we're going to go ahead and kick the ball to the side, and we're going to come back down to the floor into quadruped. And we're going to go back through our foot mobility. So turning the knee, letting the knees go wider than the hips. Heels are turned in and tucking the big toes as deep as you can. We're inhaling as our weight is going forward, and we're exhaling as we allow our hips to sink back into our heels. With each one, seeing if you can melt into it just a little bit deeper. Now, hopefully after using the lacrosse ball, there is a noticeable improvement in mobility, and there's hopefully a reduction in sensitivity, hopefully, especially when related to pain. If not, then we can talk about doing a little bit more work on the ball. We can work through some other of the toe lines, getting more out to the lateral arch of the foot. We were working just that big toe today. After doing 5 to 10 breaths, bringing the knees in and turning the heels out, tucking underneath all the way out to the pinky toes. Again, nice inhales, we go forward. Exhales, we feel the weight of the hips sink to heels. Again, is it different now than it was just a minute ago? And if so, that will be a good sign. That's a good indication. That's kind of what we're looking for, is an improvement in that general mobility. And I want to get enough reps in order to kind of set this this better mobility into our neurology, so that our nervous system is aware that it is available. So 5 to 10 reps should be good to start with. All right. So now we're going to get into our hips, our hip work. So we're going to shift all the way onto our back. And we're going to start with some figure 4 hip mobility. So I'm bringing my right ankle up to my left knee, basically making a figure 4 with the legs. And we're going to start with just a little bit of simple knee movement. I want to reach my knee that is elevated as if I'm trying to touch the wall towards my feet, getting this nice opening through the front of the hip, and then allowing that to soften and drop back down. And then nice exhale as we reach it to the wall. Inhale as we let it soften. With each one, see if you can reach the knee a little bit further. Now, while we're doing this, I don't want your sacrum to slide or rotate on the floor. I want to make sure the hips are fairly solid. They're not moving around. We're just opening that knee without a lot of excess movement of the hips. Once we get to 5 or 10 reps, we're going to switch feet and do the same thing. One thing we can do right off the bat is compare the position and the range of motion of both of our hips in this position. So when my right knee was up, I have less hip mobility on my right hip because of 5 surgeries on my right knee. This knee is a little bit elevated up towards my chest. I don't have quite as much range of motion reaching towards the wall. With my left knee, it starts lower. I have more mobility available. So these are good points to just kind of assess what is the range of motion within our joints relative to specific positions we're getting into. These are really helpful assessment points. Once we get 5 to 10 on the opposite side, we're going to switch back, still in our figure 4. I want to continue to actively reach that knee away, and I'm going to kind of keep it. So I'm no longer shifting back and forth. I'm reaching my knee towards that wall, not forcefully, very lightly, just keeping a little bit of tension. And now the opposite knee, we're going to lift that foot and we're going to pull into our chest as we exhale. Inhale, let the foot and the hip drop back down. Exhale, pull. You can use your hand on this one if the weight of your legs feels heavy. You can either grab your ankle, and as you pull your knee to your chest, you can lightly use your hands. You can also grab the knee if that's helpful. So hands can kind of come to assist, but we're still exhaling as we pull. Inhale as we let it back out. Again, notice, how does this feel in this hip? What is your range of motion? How far are you able to go? Where do you feel the tightness and tension? We're now going to switch to the other side, do the same thing. Light tension, reaching that knee to the wall at our feet, and then the opposite knee is lifting, pulling our knee to our chest. Inhale as you let the knee move to the wall. Exhale, drawing navel into spine as you pull. Again, you can use hands to help assist. And how does this feel on this hip compared to the other side? Is it tighter? Is it looser? Do you have more range of motion or less? My left hip in this position, I have a significant amount more mobility. And we're going to switch back across again, keeping our foot flat to the floor to start with. I still want to move that knee like we're trying to reach the wall, but now we're going to bring our arms straight out to the side with the palms up, and we're going to let our hips rotate as if we're trying to just move both hips, as if we're trying to put that foot flat to the floor on the opposite side of our body. Inhale, we're going to bring it all the way back up. Exhale, we're seeing how close can we get that foot to the floor. And I want to do this without allowing our shoulders to lift up off the floor. So arms are out, palms are up. I want shoulders to remain soft on the floor. I don't want the shoulder to lift up. If that shoulder's lifting up, you're going too far with your hips. So find that nice range where you can keep the shoulder connected to the floor as you exhale. Inhale, bring it all the way back up. Exhale. Nice, open, and roll. Once we do 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to switch to the other side. Again, keep that knee lightly moving towards the wall at your feet. A little bit of traction in the front of that hip. Exhale, we're letting the hip roll over as if we're trying to place that foot flat to the floor. Inhale, bringing it back up. We're only going as far as we can, keeping the shoulder connected to the floor. If you're able to touch the floor with your foot, great. If not, that's not a big deal. The bigger thing is to feel. What do you notice? Where is it tight? Where is it restricted? How is it different on this side than it was on the other side? We're looking at a couple of things related to lumbar rotation with hip mobility. So if one side is different than the other, that's going to be an important thing to talk about. All right. So now we're gonna get up and move into our shin box position. I am starting in my left side shin box. I got my left knee forward, bringing left hand out to the side. I want to spiral that elbow out and away, feeling the shoulder blade drop down the ribs, down the back. Feel the sternum kind of lift up nice and tall. I want to be nice, have a decent amount of weight in my hand and in my shoulder in order to lock down my shoulder. I don't want to move from the shoulders a whole lot with through this. I want our movement to be isolating the hips so that we can really check in on hip mobility. We're going to start with this back knee. Opening up that knee, lifting it up towards the ceiling, and then bring it right back to the floor. We're going to exhale as we lift. So as we exhale, we're drawing our navel up and into our spine, and we're lifting slowly and squeezing to see how high can we go without forcing it. Inhale into our crocodile or balloon breath, filling up that abdominal wall. With each one, we're seeing if we can get a little bit more range, again, without forcing it, without going into pain. This is a good one to just notice how much range of motion, how high does that knee come? And are you able to maintain solid posture and position in the rest of your body, or do you find that you're shifting around through the shoulders? And then we're going to transition across to the other side. So I'm now in my right side shin box, grounded palm, spiraling that elbow out and away. Feel the shoulder blade pack down and back, lifting up through the sternum. And we're going to focus on that back knee. Exhale as we lift. Inhale as we let it back to the floor. Now, interesting thing, for this movement, when we were in this figure 4, my left hip was more mobile when I was pulling my hip to the knee to my chest, which was getting into more of the posterior hip where I have more mobility. But this position, lifting up through the knee, getting into the anterior hip, is tighter and more restricted on my left hip. I have more range on my right hip. So in certain positions, I have more mobility on my right than I do on my left. And then in other positions, I have more mobility on my left than I do on my right, or the other way around, however I organize that one. Once we get 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to shift back across. So noticing the differences between right and left hip, mobility-wise, and keeping them relevant to the specific positions that we're in is really, really important, because the right hip can be tighter than the left in certain positions, and then it can be more mobile in other positions. So we have to kind of get a little bit deeper when we're talking about where are there imbalances in our mobility, because it's not just simply my right hip is tight and my left one is not. It's probably going to be relevant to the positions that you're in, and both hips are probably tight in certain positions and more mobile in other positions. And that's a really important factor when assessing the quality of our movement. So now we're still locked in shoulder, spiraled elbow, tall spine, feeling that shoulder blade packed down and back. Now we're going to let that get in, still working on this back hip. On inhale, we're letting that back hip drop down to the floor, seeing how close can we get to the floor? Can we touch the floor? Exhale, moving that hip over the top, seeing how much extension can we get in the hip. I even want to scoop ever so lightly into it to see if there's some stretch here in the front of the hip, especially going down into the groin area. If you're feeling it out to the outside of the hip, that's relevant too, and we're going to get into that. So hopefully that will be something that you feel change as we get into, once we get on the foam roller. Inhale, let that hip down. Exhale, reaching forward with that hip, coming off the floor, getting as much extension, and lightly scooping the tailbone into it to feel that stretch. We're getting into hip extension, so the more you can extend that hip, the straighter the line that you can make from the knee through the hip into the rib, the straighter that line, the more you're going to feel your glute naturally get tight without the need to clench. So I want to reach as much forward in order to feel that that glute get nice and tight. And then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. So nice grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder, tall spine. Inhale, allowing that back hip to drop down to the floor. Exhale, reaching that hip forward and lightly scooping into it. Now again, anterior hip on my left side is where I am tighter on the left side. Posterior aspect of my hip on my left is more mobile on the left side. So I can feel this a lot. It's a lot harder to get full extension right now. So I got to work on it a little bit. Exhale, nice scoop into it. Draw the navel into the spine. I don't want to force these movements, but notice, does one hip touch the floor a little easier than the other? Does one hip get a little bit more forward? How far does the hip travel from floor to forward on the right side compared to the left side? Do you have more range of motion on one side than you do on the other? Right now, for this movement, I got less overall range of motion on my left hip, even though my left hip is more mobile in other positions, which we'll get into here in just a minute. After we get 5 to 10 reps, we're going to come back to the other side. We're going to do the exact same movement, but now we're going to add some rotation into it. So palms grounded, elbows spiraled, packed shoulder, tall sternum. Inhale as you let that back hip drop. Exhale as you scoop that hip forward, getting into that same hip extension, that light stretch. And now we're going to add in a reach. So imagine that you got a piece of bread here to share, and you want to hand some bread to Skeletor over in the corner. Inhale, we're bringing that hip all the way back to the floor as we come back to our set point. Exhale, extend the hip first, and then reach and rotate second. Now with this reach, I'm not folding. I don't want my shoulders to drop or reach forward. I am spiraling around my grounded shoulder to see how far I can get my fingers to reach. I want to feel that reach from that knee, back knee into the floor, all the way out into my fingertips, drawing navel into spine as I scoop my pelvis into it. I want to feel that first stretch, front of the hip, and then as I add that rotation, that stretch moves up into low back. Can you feel that stretch? And then we'll bring that all the way across to the other side. Again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder, lifted sternum. Inhale, allowing that back hip to drop. Exhale, scoop, feel that extension, get that stretch, and then adding in our sharing of bread reach with rotation. Inhale, bringing it all the way back. Feel that hip drop. Exhale, scoop first, get this stretch first, and then add the reach. This side is a lot tighter as I get in my left side. So first, I already had more tension in the front of the hip, but as I add this rotation, it's like, oh, I feel that in low back tension. It's different on this side than it is on the other side. I can hear it in my breath. As I'm talking, I can feel that strain as I get to that end range. So these are things that I'm hoping to see improve once we bring in our foam roller. We're going to shift back to the other side, and now we're going to get into our folds. So I want to use the shin as the arrow today. We're going to reach both hands evenly through the shin. I want hands to reach perfectly square. I don't want one hand reaching further than the other hand. So we're going to inhale, filling up our crocodile breath at the front. Exhale, drawing navel into spine as we see how far Can we get both hands to reach evenly? Inhale, bringing it all the way back. I want to pay attention to where do you feel tightness and tension? Do you feel it in the back hip? Do you feel it in the front hip? I'm in my left side shin box, so my left hip is the front. Do you feel it in your low back? Where do you feel tightness, tension, and restriction? You're allowed to feel it in more than one place. Get a nice inhale at the top and exhale as we reach. And then we're going to shift and back to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. So again, shin is nice and square with the chest. Inhale, filling up that crocodile. Exhale as you draw navel into spine. Seeing how far can you reach with both hands evenly. Inhale, bringing it all the way back up. Now this is where my right hip is less mobile than my left hip. Posterior compartment of this hip is tighter on the right side than it was on the left side. I can't go quite as far, and I got a lot more stretch, tightness, restriction in that glute moving into my low back on the right side. So now that we've got all of that, we're going to do one more position, and then we're going to bring our foam roller out. So last position is getting into a nice wide V sit. I want to actively reach the back of the knees down to the floor, actively pull the top of the feet back towards the shins, actively reaching the floor and pulling the foot back towards the shin. You should feel your quads kind of tighten up. Hands get to set down right outside of the hips, grounding through the palms. We're going to spiral those elbows out and away. Feel the chest open up and lift the sternum. I want to feel the shoulder blades reaching down our back towards the floor. And we're going to focus on the kneecaps to start with. We're going to let those knees reach out and away like you're trying to touch the floor with your kneecaps. And then we're going to spiral them in as far as they will go, as if you're trying to touch the inside of your kneecap to the floor. Obviously, you're probably not going to get that far, but that's what we're trying to actively reach. We're exhaling in both directions. So our inhale is going to be when our feet come to center, straight up and down. Exhale as you spiral out and away. Inhale as you bring it back to center, and then exhale as you spiral in. And notice your knees on this. How much range of motion? How far can you go to the out with both knees? How far can you go in with both knees? And is it different on the right side compared to the left side? My external spiral on both knees is relatively even. I think I have more external spiral on my left than I do on my right. And when I bring my knees internally, I got more internal spiral on my right than I do on my left. My left is less mobile internally, and it's more mobile externally. Again, hips can be tight and mobile. It's going to be relevant to specific positions and postures and movements. So mobile hips, tight hips tend to be the same hips. So it's important to assess the movements that we have available so that we can improve the specific movements. That's what's going to improve our joint function. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and grab our foam roller. I got two foam rollers here. One is a trigger point grid. It is a firm foam roller. This is good for most people for what we're about to work on with the hips. However, if you are new to using a foam roller, especially if you find like getting on the floor, getting into plank is hard to do, having body control in certain positions is hard, this may be too firm of a foam roller, and I would rather you start with a softer foam roller. This is a melt method foam roller. It's really the softest foam roller that I think is still beneficial for people to start with. It's a little bit more expensive, but if the foam roller is brand new, this is probably a good roller, or one of the other soft blue ones. I think the OPTP foam rollers, they're a little firmer than the melt method, but they're a lot softer than the grid trigger point. Those are generally the foam rollers that I like to work with. I'm going to work with the grid. We're going to start, we're going to go through 3 different areas of our hips, and then we're going to come back and go through all those movements again. So the first muscle that we're working on, our first area, is going to be the anterior hip, getting on a muscle called the tensor fasciae latae, or the TFL. Yes, you can order that at Starbucks. I'm placing the foam roller perpendicular to the body, and I am setting it to one side. We're going to work one hip, so I want that foam roller offset so that we can only get on it with one hip. So foam roller is perpendicular with the body. First thing is I'm coming down to elbows and knees, and I'm getting into a little bit of a modified plank position. The first thing for this is being able to control your body and body pressure, so I don't want to just put all of my weight on the foam roller. If this position is difficult to maintain or you have low back pain, then this is probably not a place to start. I would not recommend doing the foam roller right now. Instead, schedule a session with me so we can talk about it. At this point, I'm assuming that you can get in this position pain-free, without pain. So if you're here in this plank, we're going to set our hip bone, that bony prominence on the front of our hip, on the foam roller, and we're just going to lightly touch it. I'm not putting all of my body weight onto it. From here, I'm bending my hip a little bit by pulling my knee. I got my right hip on the roller, so I am pulling my right knee up towards my chest in order to get a crease at the hip joint. We're then going to slowly shift our body weight forward so that the foam roller moves into the crease of the hip. Then you can just kind of let that leg soften and allow a little bit of gravity onto the foam roller. You are now on your tensor fasciae latae. This is the muscle that you're on. It might be sensitive right off the bat. I want to keep that pain to be below a level 3. Needs to be in that slight discomfort. If this is above a level 3, then you need to either take some weight off of it or adjust your position so that you are on a spot that's not so painful. If you cannot find a spot that is not so painful, then I would go ahead and skip this and schedule a session with me. We're going to do our exact same breath and melt. Nice inhale through the nose, exhale. With each exhale, allow a little bit more gravity and a little bit of melting. Remember that tissue, that spot that we're on is melting butter, and the foam roller is a hot knife. Once we feel a little bit of a melt, we can adjust our weight, our body position, by moving either up or down about 1 inch. We don't need to go very far. And see if where is there a spot that kind of speaks to us, that wants some attention. The other thing that we can do is adjust our outside hip by moving it either up towards the ceiling to stack the hips, or rolling it down to where the hips are parallel to the floor. Again, I'm kind of seeking out where is the spot, and specifically, where is a spot that I can keep the pain below a level 3, where I can control my body weight on it and still have access to full breath. We're going to get a 30 to 40% reduction in this spot. You might find that the spot moves fairly quickly. If you get a 30 to 40% reduction, like within the first 15 seconds or so, then you can adjust your body lightly in order to stay on that spot. But again, I want to make sure that we're not rolling back and forth, we're not strumming, we're not doing a lot of jostling on the foam roller. For the most part, we're just breathing, softening, and melting. As you feel that spot reduce by 30 to 40%, we're going to switch over to the other side. So again, moving the foam roller to the opposite hip, down elbows. We're going to set that hip bone on the foam roller lightly, find the crease of the hip, move the foam roller into that crease. Take some nice deep breaths in and out and feel that melting action. As you feel it melt, we can move an inch down or an inch up as long as we're staying within that crease. And we can roll our top hip up to the ceiling or back down parallel to the floor. Again, we're seeking out the spot that speaks to you the most. It could be hips stacked, hips parallel, a little bit up or a little bit down. And really we can work more than one spot. We don't have to just do one spot. I'm keeping it focused on just one spot today in order to get through the full assessment. But oftentimes I will have people work 2 to 3 spots for each location that we're doing. As you feel that, that melt, again, 30 to 40% reduction in discomfort. You can follow it just a little bit. And as that reduces by significantly, we are going to shift to a different area of the body. So now I'm placing the foam roller perpendicular to the body. I'm coming back to my elbow and knee plank, but I got the foam roller at my hip level. So I want it kind of at hip level. I actually want it a little bit above hip level. So on elbows, we're going to bring one knee up, all the way up, and see if we can set this inside of the knee and touch it onto the foam roller. I want the knee, the hip, to be higher, less than 90 degrees. So that knee needs to be above waist level. What I want to watch out for is that knee being too low, because we'll end up on the wrong area of muscles that I want to work. So that knee has to be pulled up as high as possible. From here, we're going to allow our leg to slowly move away so that foam roller goes up into our adductor space. Now this might be sensitive right off the bat, especially if you have medial knee pain. So I want to be sensitive to that. Again, I don't want to be a 3 or above on the pain scale. So if you cannot modulate your position to keep that pain below a level 3, then I want you to just give this a break, or find a position that you can get into where it's not so sensitive. It might be that you need to move the foam roller higher up towards the crease of the hip, or it might be that you need to move it more closer to the knee itself. So from here, we're getting nice deep breaths in, out, allowing some melt, and we can slowly move that foam roller deeper up the hip. And again, we're seeking out where it feels, where you feel the spot. Where does it call to you the most? Where does your body say, this is where I need a little bit of attention? And once we find that spot, we're taking deep breaths, allowing gravity to melt into the foam roller. Again, I only want about a 30 to 40% reduction in that spot. I don't want the spot to go completely away. As it reduces 30 to 40%, you can move towards the knee, or you can move up closer to the hip and find one last spot. Again, nice deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. From in this position, if you feel comfortable, you can even allow some of the weight out of your arms. You can come all the way down to rest on the floor, as long as you still feel that melting action in the hip. And as that spot reduces 30 to 40%, we're going to shift and do the same thing on the other side. So again, foam rollers perpendicular to the body. I want it a little bit higher than the hip, so that when we bring that knee up, we got to bring that knee up above hip level. We're going to let that knee roll out just a little bit so that we get into that inside of the knee, and taking some nice deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, allowing that leg to melt over the roller. As you feel that initial melting, we can now start to work up the hip and seek out where is the spot. You know, working all out to the knee or all the way up deep into the hip. And once you find a spot, we're going to stick on it. Allow that, we're going to let gravity have our leg, taking some nice deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Now, as we're doing this on right side, I want to compare it to left side. You may notice that the spot on one leg is closer to the knee. You might notice that it could be closer to the hip. Is one side louder? Does it speak to you more? Is it more sensitive than the other side? Maybe it feels really dense. Not necessarily sensitive, but it feels thick and dense, like you just can't even get into it just yet. That can be helpful and relevant information as well. As this spot starts to reduce by 30 to 40%, we can either move deeper into the hip or further out to the knee, wherever that next spot speaks to you. And we're going to do one more little melt. Again, nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. We'll give it a good 30, 60, up to 90 seconds, feeling that, or 30 to 40% reduction in that spot. And as we get that spot, we're going to shift, and we got one more position we're going to get into. So at this point, I want the foam roller is going to be perpendicular with the body. On this one, we need to have good access to our shoulders. So I'm in an inverted position. We got to be able to lift hips up off the floor with the shoulders. So if this is something that you cannot do with the shoulders, then you may have to skip this particular one for right now. Using good solid shoulders without pain, we're lifting hips up, and we're just going to sit our bottom onto the foam roller. I don't have a lot of weight. I'm just basically using the foam roller as a chair. And then we're going to slide our hips forward so that the foam roller is kind of resting underneath our sacrum. From here, we're going to let both hips rotate to one side. So I'm letting my knees rotate, which is moving me onto one side of the foam roller. And I'm kind of getting right on the edge of the sacrum and the glute muscle. And really, I kind of want to get into that meat of the muscle and less on the bone. This may be sensitive right off the bat. We're getting into kind of where the piriformis is at. If that muscle is really tight and restricted, it can be incredibly sensitive. So again, I want to make sure that we're not moving into a level 3 or above, keeping it below that level 3. From here, we can allow our hips to shift forward on the foam roller about 3 inches in either direction, either rolling towards our hips or moving back up towards our head. And I want to find, where is there a spot? And again, a spot doesn't need to be painful. It just needs to be something that's kind of speaking to us, like, ooh, that feels like a good massage pressure, that my body feels like that's a good spot. When we find that spot, we're going to nice deep inhale, full exhale. You can allow the leg that you roll on top of to soften. You can let that knee straighten, let it soften, and we're getting that nice melting action. Nice inhale through the nose, exhale out through the mouth. As you feel that spot reduce by 30 to 40%, you can either move up or down. We can also roll the hip just a little bit more, letting the outside hip roll over the top just a little bit more. Again, as long as we're staying below a level 3 pain or discomfort. As we get that nice 30 to 40% reduction in that spot, again, there might be more here, but for right now, I want to keep things light. I don't want to do a lot of massive work, especially if this is the first time you're doing this. We're going to shift to the other side. I'm turning around. I'm still doing the same movement, but I just want to make sure it's visible. So back centered on the sacrum, letting both knees rotate towards the side, the other side, so that you're getting into that meaty muscle along the edge of the sacrum. Again, this might be sensitive right off the bat, so make sure you're not level 3 or above in discomfort. And from here, we can slightly move the roller up to our head or down towards our feet. Again, it only needs to move about 3 inches in either direction. And seeking out, where is the spot? And when you find the spot, you're going to stick to it, taking some nice deep breaths, feel that melt. You can let that leg soften and straighten out a little bit in order to get that glute to relax. And a nice melting butter on a hot knife. As that spot starts to reduce 30 to 40%, you can move up towards the head or down towards the feet to see if there's another spot. And once you find that spot, same thing, nice melt. If you've got pretty good core, solid shoulders, and you're able to drop down to an elbow and kind of still be in control of your body, non-painful, you can find other positions that are a little bit easier, less stressful, in order to keep that pressure on the hip. Again, making sure nothing is a level 3 or above, and really any discomfort is simply from the massage, the foam roller, and it should be light, not heavy pressure, not a lot of discomfort. Discomfort is not a welcome part of a massage, especially when you're doing it yourself. Really, it shouldn't be a whole lot of when somebody else is doing it with you as well. It's one of my pet peeves with massage therapy is the massage therapists that do it, that do painful work, they're not doing you any benefits. It's actually not, it's probably causing more harm than good. So as you get that melting action, that last bit, we will now set the foam roller off to the side. And now we're going to go through all our movements again. So this class is obviously going a little bit long right now, so I understand if anybody needs to jump out, but we're going to go through all of it starting figure 4 all the way through the V-sit. I'm going to try to go through it a little bit faster this time since we've already run through it. The only thing I'm going to spend a little bit more time on is the folds. I want to do a little bit of back and forth work with the folds. So we're coming all the way onto our back, placing our ankle on our knee, getting into our figure 4 position. Inhale, allowing that knee to move to the head. Exhale, reach to the wall. We'll do 3 to 5 reps of each of these movements, partly to assess, to reassess. I want to see, does it feel better? Do you have more range of motion? As we do it on one side, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Exhale as we reach the knee to the wall. Inhale as you bring it back towards your head. My left hip is still a little tighter here, but I have a little bit more range of motion when I reach my knee to the wall on this left side. My right side felt really good. Continue to move at the speed of your breath. Switching back to the other side, knees softly reaching towards the wall at your feet. Opposite knee is pulling towards the chest. As you exhale, inhale, letting it back out. Exhale, pulling in. You can use your hands to slightly help assist and create a little bit more traction of that stretch. And then we'll switch and do the same thing on the other side, reaching that knee away, pulling the opposite knee into your chest. Again, how does it feel? Right side to left side, and how does it feel now compared to earlier? We'll switch back to the other side. Again, light reach of that knee to the wall. Now we're letting our arms come straight up, and we're rotating the hips over as if you're trying to set that foot flat to the floor. As you exhale, inhale, bringing it back up. Exhale, nice roll. Again, 3 to 5 reps. Kind of reassessing. If you're getting an improvement in the range of motion, then I would do more repetition in order to establish that neurology of that movement. If it's the same, 3 reps is fine. Switching sides, reaching that knee away. Exhale as you rotate. Inhale as you bring it back. You notice that if there's any improvements in the quality of range of motion and how it feels, any reductions in tightness, tension, and discomfort. All of those are going to be really good bits of information. All right, so now we're going to come back up into our shin box position. I'm back into my left side, left hand grounded, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder. And we're starting out with opening up that back knee to the ceiling. As we exhale, inhale, bringing it back to the floor. How much higher are you able to go? Do you have more range of motion? I've got a noticeable amount better range on my right hip, although this is the hip that moves better in this position. So I'm really going to be more curious about my left hip. Switching sides. Grounded palm, spiraled elbow, opening up that back knee. Still tighter on this side compared to the right, but I have a good amount, probably 15, 20 degrees more range of motion in the left hip. And I think I could get more if I spent a little bit more time on the roller working in that outer hip and inner thigh. I can feel those areas still a little bit. And we're going to switch back to the other side. Grounded palm, spiraled elbow. This one is inhale, letting that back hip drop. Exhale, scoop and reach forward, feeling into that extension. We're going to do 3 to 5 of just getting that hip to go into extension. See if you can feel that glute tighten up as you extend that hip forward. The more you extend, the more you should feel that active glute. Inhale back, exhale as you scoop. And then I want to go ahead and add our reach and rotation. So as you scoop on the next one, you got bread, and we're going to share that bread. Again, as we're rotating, I don't want to fold at the shoulders. I want to spiral. Are you able to get more reach? Can you go further? Does it feel different? Does it feel more mobile? Do you feel like you have greater access to mobility? Then we're going to bring that all the way back across to the other side. Grounded palm, spiral to elbow, pack shoulder. Back hip, inhale, letting it drop. Exhale, scooping it forward. I got more mobility in my left hip. I'm able to get it to drop a little bit more towards the floor. Still a little tight as I get into my extension with my scoop, and I'm getting a little bit more stretch. I'm getting farther into it so that I can feel more stretch. So sometimes increased mobility, you're going to feel a greater stretch. It might even feel like it's tighter even though you have more access to range of motion. So sometimes the feeling of tightness is not necessarily a signal of lack of mobility. It might be a signal of more mobility, that you actually improved mobility so that you're actually able to move muscles enough to stretch them so that you feel how tight they are. Now we're going to add in our reach and rotation. So as you scoop, piece of bread, adding in that nice spiral rotation. Inhale all the way back to the floor. Exhale, scoop, and reach. This one is still pretty tight. It feels looser in the hip, but I still feel it in that low back, which we did not work on today. We can work on that another time. Then we're going to bring it all the way back again, and we're going to get into our folds, but I want us to do our folds going side to side. So using the shin, both hands, exhale, reaching evenly. As we exhale, inhale, coming all the way up, and we're going to go all the way across to the other side and do the same thing. Nice exhale, inhale as we come back. And as we're going back and forth, I want to get that nice sense of comparison. How far are you able to fold towards your right side? How far are you able to fold to your left? Has the range of motion improved on each side from earlier? Are they a little bit more balanced out? As we're going back and forth on this, I want to start to get into where we allow our hips to open up. So I want to change our shin box position by sliding that back leg back a little bit further, continuing to get our nice reach and fold, both hands reaching evenly. Inhale, bring that back knee in as we shift across, and then opening up the other side, back knee. Notice if that elicits a little bit more interesting stretch and mobility, especially in that back hip as we let it slide back. This is where I feel it more on my right hip. So my left hip, getting into this shoulder posterior area, I have a lot more range of motion. I can get deep into that posterior compartment of my left hip. On my right side, it is not quite the same. It's more tight and restricted, especially in the back of the hip, and getting up into the right side low back. So again, hip can be both mobile and immobile at the same time. It's relevant to the positions that we get into. All right, last one, nice wide V-sit. Active knees reaching to the floor, tops of the feet pulling back towards the shin, hands grounded. We're exhale, spiraling out and away. Inhale, and then exhale, spiraling in. This one, I have a pretty marked improvement. Left hip is still a little less internal compared to right, but they're a lot closer together, and both hips feel a lot pretty even in external. And we can finish up by getting onto our back, feet flat to the floor, hands out to the side with the palms up. Allow your shoulders to soften down to the floor and relax as much as possible. If you find your head wants to be up and your shoulders rolled forward, you can put a little bolster underneath your head and your neck and your shoulders in order to feel them ground and relax and ground down as much as possible. And we're going to take some nice inhales in through the nose, filling up that balloon breath. Feel that the abdominal walls blowing up like a balloon, not just forward into the belly, but also out through the sides and into the low back. Exhale, draw the navel into your spine. As you inhale into that balloon, also allow that inhale to inflate up into the ribs. Feel the ribs expand in all directions. Exhale, let everything melt to the floor. Inhale, breathing into that tension of filling the balloon, filling the ribs. You can let that breath move up into the neck and the shoulders. On the inhale, on the exhale, let that tension melt into the floor. And have another 2 or 3 more breaths in and out, and just allow yourself to have a full scan of the body. Notice any areas of tension. If you feel tension in your body, breathe into that tension on the inhale. And on the exhale, allow that tension to melt and release with the exhale of your breath into the floor. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and we'll slowly sit back up.